Hello all and welcome to the official FanTeam podcast brought to you by FanTeam, the biggest daily fantasy site in Europe. My name is Andrew and today I'm joined once again by Premier League injury guru and fantasy football expert Ben Dinnery. How's it going, Ben?
All good, Andrew. All good, my friend. Looking forward to attacking another game week and coming home with some cash.
Indeed,
Can't wait.
Indeed. It's been a bit of a boring midweek, haven't it? And we were just kind of chatting off air that a few of the games on the weekend kind of went against the data and against expectation. I didn't do anything this weekend, in terms of winnings and just looking at the midweek games. It seemed to be a bit of low scoring kind of drab games at the moment. Do you think teams are becoming fatigued, worn out, or something else like if we look at Man United, Leicester, Liverpool, teams like this who are playing so well are just struggling to even score a goal at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, look, I think it's a little bit of a perfect storm, to be honest. So many different influencing factors.
Yeah.
The fixture congestion it's real. It's upon us. So yeah, you're going to have players who are maybe not performing at optimal levels. You're also having managers that are, switching about their team and rotating. And unless you're Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, it will have an impact on most sides. Even if we talk a little bit around that fluency of play. Injuries, you touched upon Leicester City. You've got some big injuries there, particularly with the playmakers. Not Ashley Barnes, Harvey Barnes, James Maddison. Also, Jamie Vardy looks a little bit out of sorts as well. Maybe he's coming back. I'm not saying he was rushed back, but maybe that niggle with his groin is still there in his back of his mind. So, it's not surprising. It was a tough set of fixtures midweek. And trying to sort of navigate through that minefield was difficult. But look, I'm sitting in the money as it stands. I had 2 Sheffield United defenders and I had 2 Manchester United defenders. So it's the defence which has been carrying my teams for the last few weekends.
Sure.
And really not the. If I could do it higher up the pitch, I'd be laughing. I'd be a millionaire, probably.
A couple of you mentioned the fact of Barnes, Maddison. Maybe can you give us an update on players like a couple of players? We're like Barnes. I think is 5 or 6 weeks maybe, but Grealish kind of seems to be on the cusp of coming back, and he's not in the squad. And obviously he adds that excitement and and energy and dynamism into Villa's play. Is he coming back soon?
The long and short answer, there's no definitive timeline just because of the type of injury or issue that's ongoing. It's an overuse injury, most commonly referred to as shin splints. So that's not because, like I say, it's just that overplay. Yep. It could be linked to that, that shutdown away from Bodymore Heath earlier on in the year. Yeah. Players working hard to get themselves back into full fitness. Slight changes in services, footwear, different types of training, and it's that accumulation of fatigue. What we do know is he's relatively pain-free. There is still a little bit of a niggle there. It sounds as if this weekend might come too soon, right. But again, it's not too far away. He's still working with the club doctor and the medical team as it is, and it's one of those ones where it will be a game day decision, day to day. And ultimately that will come down to Jack as well in managing that pain threshold. So, Dean Smith has been getting a lot of flack because people are just, going with mainstream media outlets suggested initially it was 4 to 6. It was at least a month. And then Dean Smith said, well, it could just be a week. And he's getting a lot of flack for that. But, in his defense, it is one of those types of injuries. It's not like a hamstring injury sort of grade 1 where we can go, right, well, typically, ordinarily, we're talking 2 weeks-ish. This type of injury is down to the individual and just how it responds to treatment and that rest.
And one player who's returning from injury, hopefully soon, I'm very, very excited about, both from, just watching him in terms of, excitement and from a fantasy view as well, because he's quite cheap because he started off the season at Wolves. Diogo Jota. Diogo Jota. How close is he to a return to first team action?
Yeah, well, he would have been back last weekend had he not fallen ill overnight at the team hotel. So then he was separated from the squad and he was sent home. Now he returned to training on Tuesday, took part in a light session, and I think he was also involved in aspects of the session on Wednesday as well. So we're at 50-50 in terms of whether he'll be in and around that match day squad. I suspect he probably will be, and maybe introduced from the bench. What we'd expect, given the length of absence, is a graduated return.
Makes sense.
Integrated within the team. If Liverpool can replicate the performance of last weekend and keep that momentum going, then the pressure is almost off Jurgen Klopp to throw him straight back in there, and he can afford to do his 15, 20, 25 minutes, and gradually increase up until that first start.
Superb. Thank you very much, Ben. Okay, so for our YouTube watchers, please remember to click the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen if you haven't subscribed already, and to press the like button if you enjoy our content. So our feature tournament for this podcast and video is the Gameweek 27 Weekly Monster, which has a prize pool this week of a massive €75,000, and we'll be running through the game week's applicable fixtures and sharing our entries with you. So our watchers and listeners are aware what is very similar to the free hit chip in FPL, where you basically pick the best 11 players for the game week that you think you'll score the most points. Simple. So the brief rules: you build a squad of 11 players, has to include at least one goalkeeper, 3 defenders, 2 midfielders, and a forward. You can select a maximum of 3 players from any one Premier League team. You have 105 million budget to build your 11-man team. You can make limited changes before the deadline. You pick a captain and a vice captain. Your captain scores double points and your vice will replace them if your captain doesn't start. Players are priced in accordance with match odds, so it's very specific to their matchup that week. And the safety net applies, which means that if one of your players does not start, he will be replaced automatically, if possible, by a cheaper player from the same club and position. So for those watching on YouTube, the point score matrix is now on screen. As you can see, it's very similar to the season-long FanTeam game and indeed the Fantasy Premier League game. Ben, with the race for the top 4 intensifying, which is, it looks to be a tremendous race with a lot of teams in there you probably wouldn't have expected to be there, at the start of the season. And with the Champions League and Europa League back next week, which is going to cause a big distraction for a lot of teams. Who do you think are the teams who are, best equipped to be able to handle both sets of pressures, maybe, and push on in the running now? Because a lot of teams are finding it hard, aren't they? But who do you think of the teams?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Leicester have dropped out of the Europa League, so that eases things in terms of their fixture congestion. But they're carrying so many injuries to key players. They're going to struggle to stay in and around that. That is a $64,000 question.
I think West Ham, without their distraction, they've got pretty solid defense and a decent attack as well. It's just they seem to have a very good kind of 11, 12, 13 or 14, but if they were hit by a few injuries, if Antonio was out again, if they lost someone like maybe Creswell or Kufal or someone like that, maybe. But I think West Ham could maybe make a play for the top 4. Spurs and Arsenal seem to be kind of out of it at the moment, but Spurs last week hammered Burnley and looked really, really good. Do you think that Spurs can make a late run for it?
They've certainly, potentially they've got some quality on that pitch. Again, you've got to be carrying a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
We've seen, is this the emergence of Gareth Bale, the one that we expected to see, when he arrived at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? So we will see. We record before Thursday night's game. Yeah. We hope that he can get another start. If he does, that's 2 in a week. Can he start his 3rd game on Sunday? I don't know. Carlo Ancelotti will also be hopeful that Everton can push on for those places in European. But they haven't looked great, in all honesty. He has tweaked his side a slightly little bit. And he's putting Richarlison in a more attacking role and almost leaving those sort of defensive responsibilities, pushing those to one side. Yeah. And that's reaping, 1 or 2 rewards. With the European involvement, if you ask any player, what would they rather be doing, playing or training? You want to play. If those teams are, involved in, getting victories, and the success continues and confidence is building and growing, they will be loving playing week in and week out. Fatigue is never really talked about when a team is successful and doing really, really well. However, on the flip side, if you do pick up one or two bad results, that's compounded, say, in the Champions League, then, it may start to affect performances on a weekend as well. And those little knocks, niggles, and fatigue issues start to come into play. So I still think there's a few twists and turns to come about between now and obviously mid-May, at the end of the season. But exciting, keeps us all on our toes, Andrew, gives us plenty of things to talk about.
This is it. There is probably all the way down to 9th or 10th. Every single one of those teams will have eyes on a top 4 finish. You'd probably guess the league is done now, right? But in terms of those 8 or 9 teams are all battling for those top 4, I think we're in for some wonderful matches towards, in this last quarter of the season. Very, very exciting stuff. Okay, so there are 3 4-round weekly monster tournaments every game week. This week has a prize pool of €12,500 with a guaranteed first prize of €1,500, which you can enter for as little as €2. For this week, there's also a free entry to this competition for new FanTeam users. So if you do fancy seeing what all the fuss is about, head to fanteam.com, register and play that tournament for free. There is a high roller tournament if you want to play for big money. But our feature tournament for this podcast is a €75,000 prize pool game with a guaranteed €7,500 first prize for just a €20 entry, which Ben was looking at very, very briefly on the weekend after your wonderful start with West Brom with Johnston and Bartley, was it, Ben?
It is, yeah. That's I think it's the second time in either 2 or 3 weeks where I've actually been top.
Amazing.
And you allow yourself to dream and drift off. It's for it all to come crashing down.
what am I spending this on? And then all of a sudden you end up with 30 quid and you're off down the shop for a loaf of bread.
Yeah, but look, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all.
100%. The teams that we pick now can be used across all monster tournaments. Just a reminder, to enter all FanTeam contests, you must be over 18 and be gambleaware.org. For this game week, we have 9 Premier League matches applicable for this contest, starting with Sheffield United against Southampton, followed by Aston Villa against Wolves, and then Brighton versus Leicester. Maybe not the most exciting matches on the Saturday there, Ben. Early on Sunday, then we start off with West Brom against Newcastle, then Liverpool host Fulham for the Manchester Derby at 4:30 in the afternoon, which is going to be a fantastic match, before Spurs host Crystal Palace in the evening, and on Monday evening Chelsea play Everton before West Ham play Leeds. It's worth pointing out that the early kick-off on Saturday between Burnley and Arsenal is not applicable for this contest. So what stands out for you, Ben, when looking at these fixtures this weekend?
In terms of a FanTeam draft, I actually really like the look of this weekend. Sometimes I struggle to maybe identify 1 or 2 players in that back line that will pull a clean sheet. I'm actually going with a back 5. So and I really like the look of it. I think the difficult calls are going to be the Manchester Derby. Yeah. And I know City should steamroller United and continue, that 28-game unbeaten streak. Is it 21 straight wins? But look, it's a derby. So, anything can happen. Referee decision, player dismissal, sending off. The Wolves is it Aston Villa? Yeah, so that the Black Country Derby is another one that asks a lot of questions. 2 teams that aren't in great form. So you tend to see, these games either bring out the best in people or it just gets completely nullified. Yeah. I like some of the those players that you perceive as being those budget options are the big appeal for me this weekend. Like Sheffield United against Southampton. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. You're getting some good players in and around that £6 million pound mark. The only concern is, following the dismissal of Phil Jagielka on Wednesday night, and they're already, Chris Weiler's already without Jack O'Connell, Chris Basham, John Egan, and so who's he going to play at centre back? That's a slight worry. And I also like, I shouldn't like, obviously, my hometown boys, I think, could struggle down at the Hawthorns. West Brom still have a game to play on Thursday evening, so it's by no means locked in. But, Newcastle struggle, or have been struggling for goals anyway without the likes of Callum Wilson. But, you throw Miguel Almiron into the mix and also Alan Saint-Maxim, who are both reportedly out until next month. Yeah. You're then questioning where our goals are coming from. And so for that reason, like I say, I think there's a lot of defensive assets that you can pick up relatively cheap to go and pack that forward line and those attack-ins. West Ham is attracting quite a bit of interest from me because I find Leeds to be one of, along with Aston Villa, probably the two most frustrating teams that I've followed this season, just in terms of the inconsistencies, and particularly Leeds. They can go out and get a great 3-0 result, was it, I think, against Southampton, and then get turned over off an average Villa side 1-0 when everybody expected the likes of Rafinha and Bamford to do the business. So, I will be going against Leeds. Maybe a little bit of an emotional punt in that, because I want a little bit of revenge for last week. But I do like them. So I think those big, high-priced premium assets inherently across the board, I've really stayed away from this week. And I feel as if I've got a more solid team in every department. There's one or two players who aren't locked in yet, which we will discuss. But for the 9 or so players that I've got, I'm honestly really happy, which is unusual. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
We will see as it plays out, Ben, and no doubt I'll have messages off you saying, my team, what the hell's going on? Newcastle turned up and won 5-0 at West Brom.
Yeah.
The one thing I do like, I completely agree, actually, with everything you said. I really fancy West Brom this week. And I know, I didn't think I'd ever say that, but, as you've mentioned, no Wilson, no Saint-Maximin, no Almiron. They're not in form. West Brom are, I wouldn't say on the crest of a wave, but they are playing much, much better. They've signed some quality players. They're at home. They're going to look at this fixture and think, we have to get 3 points. If we have any ambition, any at all, of staying up, we've got to get 3 points. So I think they'll be going alpha leather for this. So I completely agree with that. One thing I do like when, say in the Manchester derby, for example, there's players like Bruno Fernandes I'd use, as an example. You're not going to expect much from him this week, but he's on penalties. And as we know, he does tend to find a way. And Man City have conceded a goal in, I think it's 2 or 3 of the last 5 now. They're not as, as tight as they were a month or so ago. So Bruno, for example, was only 8.2 million, which I think is really, really cheap. And, if you think you can build a team actually of premium players, albeit not at premium prices, surrounded by, the kind of teams and players you mentioned, Sheffield United, West Brom, I think you can find that we can build quite a, as you say, a really exciting team this week based off form players we think will play well, but you can also chuck in a couple of those premium assets who can, all Bruno needs is a penalty, as we know, or a free kick or a goal, goal out of the blue. I think a lot of the other ones, it's very hard to get excited. I think, Brighton and Leicester, both teams so inconsistent. They look really good and then they don't seem to get the results. Brighton's XG, if Brighton scored even, 2/3 of the goals they were supposed to score in terms of their XG, they would be well clear of relegation, probably, mid-table or higher. Leicester have lost a lot of players. They look pretty dire at the moment, as you say. And Liverpool and Fulham will be an interesting one because, you automatically head towards Liverpool immediately. But Fulham's defence has been superb, in the last few weeks. I think they've conceded only 1 goal now, I want to say in the last 5 games, which, is absolutely incredible form for Fulham. So, I don't think that's going to be a walk in the park. And as we saw last night, Palace frustrated Man United. So Spurs have got them, and again, it's hard, it's inconsistent. We get to see how Spurs play this evening against that tough Fulham side, but maybe that's, again, maybe that Spurs Palace game is not, is not as one sided as as we mentioned, and as we talked about earlier, teams like Spurs and Liverpool who have got these extra fixtures due to Europe and wherever else, the fatigue is going to start to get in there. So let's have a look at your team then, Ben. So I've got it on screen. If you could just read it out and go through it for our watchers and listeners.
Yeah, so 5-3-2. It's not a formation that I deploy often, and I'm not really one for sentiment. But I've went with me two baggies again. The two baggies that carried us to the top of the fan team table last weekend, albeit very briefly. Yeah. Johnson and Barty. We've touched upon it. Baggies need the points. I've watched them. The last few weeks. I thought second half at Turf Moor with 10 men, they were superb. How they didn't come away with a result in that game beggars belief. And then again, if they took the chances, they would be the two. These are good 2 and 3-0 performances that they've been putting in. Managed to obviously scrape 3 points last week, and look solid. Sam Allardyce has had an opportunity now to work with the players on the training pitches, something that you don't get much chance to do around the heavy congested, because it's recovery, get ready, playing, recovery. So this time he's been able to sort of drill down. They've almost got a clean bill of health, so he's got everybody to choose from. I'll be interested to see what happens on Thursday night against Everton. Again, I'm expecting a good performance, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was at least a draw in there for West Brom. And I think that'll, if they do, then that level of confidence breeds confidence, and they'll carry that over to Newcastle. An early goal against Newcastle would just shatter our confidence completely. And again, you're questioning who's going to score the goals for us. I would like to see Andy Carroll start. I'm not really sure Steve Bruce is down that route. He seems to be Joe Litton for the last 2 matches, and then Dwight Gale prior to that. But who's going to create? We've got like Sir Ryan Fraser, who maybe not up to speed, and you've got Shelby who can ping a ball. But other than that, you're scratching your head. So there's nothing there. So I'll go with the two baggies. And now I've went for a punt on Johnny. Won the price, which I think is great, at just 5.6 million. But the reason it's a bit of a sneaky punt stroke gamble, because we know he's been integrated gradually since his return from a long-term knee injury. Obviously, Wolves playing Villa in the Black Country Derby, so it's going to be a tight affair anyway. My hope, or what I would envisage, is I'm not looking for any attacking returns whatsoever. I'm expecting a pretty tight, cagey affair for around about 60 minutes, and that's when Johnny, tends to get the hook.
Oh, you sneaky boy!
So that 60 to 70 minute mark, get the job done, lock in the clean sheet, come off, and then whatever happens after that. So it's a punt that basically Wolves will keep a clean sheet for 60 minutes, because the chances are Johnny's coming off.
You want to hope he doesn't come off in the 59th, mate. But no, I'd say that's next level thinking. There is, Ben. I got to be fair. That's really good stuff.
So he hasn't played. I don't think he has. He might have played 190 minutes since his return, and the rest have been peppered around that. I think maybe 57 to 70 minute mark. So we're ballpark. So yeah, that was me thinking at 5.6 million. There's value there to be had, definitely, especially against that Villa attack, who without Jack Grealish, again it's similar to Newcastle. We've had Barkley, who hasn't even started the last two. So Dean Smith obviously isn't happy with how things are going, and he's shaking things up. Chances are we could see Douglas Luiz, and Barkley back in that team this weekend, or even never mentioned. I think it was January signing. Is it Sanson?
Yeah.
He might get thrown in just to shake things up after their loss. Then I've went to Brighton and Lewis Dunk again. We talked about two teams who in front of goal aren't great. And to mention, I think it was the stat that Brighton have had 65 shots in 3 matches, 20 on target, 1 goal.
It's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible.
and that's always the concern when you're picking somebody from a defensive backline and a team who cannot score, because you're looking for those offensive players to ease the burden, to ease the pressure, to allow you to push up. Stats only tell you, of course, so much, because Brighton were really good against West Brom last weekend and were hugely unfortunate. 2 penalty misses and a disallowed goal, which, had Lee Mason not have been injured, would have cost him, would have given him a week off. We don't really know what's going on in there. So, given the fact that Leicester, are struggling offensively as well, I just think it's worth maybe a punt on that Brighton. And I'm expecting a pretty tight cage affair. Could be a nils each for me, that one.
You see a 1-0 with a Lewis Dunk free kick.
Always
extraordinaire,
mate. Always a bonus if you get any of it. Primarily, for those budget options, look at the defence, and if anything else comes from further up the pitch, then it's happy days. Yeah. Liverpool, Fulham. Fulham have been in absolutely great form, and it's not a game where I would expect, again, a lot of goals. You wouldn't expect the Liverpool of old to come rushing out and put in a big performance. We'll see where they are on Thursday evening again, just in terms of if they can back up that win against Sheffield United at Bramall Lane, where they looked, good. They were good for those 3 points, scored some good goals. The return of Diogo Jota will add a new dimension and help ease the burden on that, maybe, that attacking 3. Also thrown into the mix, you've got Fabinho now, and you can, there's options in there for Jurgen Klopp to maybe change things up a little bit. I can see maybe Liverpool just nicking this one, a 1-0 or possibly 2-0. And obviously, that's what I'll be going for. And Trent always offers that little bit of an attacking threat as well. And the 5th defender, this is the question mark, because yes, I love the fixture, but it was the dismissal of Phil Jagielka, combined with all of those other defensive assets that Chris Weyler's missing, which is a concern now. And who is he going to put in at centre back? I mean, Sheffield United finished with Ollie McBurney his centre half on Wednesday night, and Chris Weyler jokingly said, well, we might have to stick him in there again. He was like Richard Goff. I think that's probably highly unlikely. I mean, there are options, but nobody with that big commanded presence of a big centre half. You can put in maybe the likes of Brian or Lowe or even Apadu centrally, but they're all in and around that sort of 180 to 185 centimetre. And you need somebody who can dominate, especially when you're talking about Sheffield United. You want a big dominating centre half to come and win things. But look, they'll take a lot of positives from that win over Aston Villa. Backs against the wall, 10 men, clean sheet. They won't give up hope that they can, get out of this. However unlikely it seems. So, I'm willing to take a punt at 6 million on Baldock.
I think with Baldock as well, he really impressed me last season, and I put him in a few FanTeam Weekly Monsters this season. And when you watch a game, then you tend to look out just that kind of little bit more for your specific players. He's very attacking, and I think he's been very lucky this season not to get a couple more assists and even a goal or two. So I think he's a really nice shout.
Yeah, I think Sheffield United haven't turned a bad team overnight.
No, exactly.
It's just very, very small margins. And while they're winning games by 1, they've lost a few occasions that I've seen them this season where they deserve to get beat. Yeah. I think we mentioned on the last pod was the West Ham. And I thought, was that the straw that brought the camel's back? But look, they're still fighting, and they still believe that they can retain their top flight status. So that's my back 5 or back 6 with Johnson stuck in there.
Good.
The midfield, I'm not always one for derbies, but if I do go a derby, it's got to be the man for the big occasion, the players who, the players who earn the big bucks. Kevin De Bruyne, yes, he's he may not be 100%, and yes, Gundogan is probably the pick you should go for if you want the value and you maybe want to play the percentages. But for me, like I say, I'm just considering it's United, and all of the eyes are on these players, and these players are like peacocks. You know what? I want to stroll on that pitch and I want to whip my little tail out. I want to do some twerk and I want to look like the dog's bollocks. You know, I want to look the best, and I want to showcase my abilities to everybody in the world. And there's no bigger platform to do it than a huge, derby day in the Premier League. And that's why I went for De Bruyne. And of course, he's got a wand of a foot. So, whether it's goals, whether it's assists, set pieces, he ain't going to be far away from the points if City, are to get on the score sheet.
I fancied them too. I know the reverse fixture was, I don't know if you remember that really dull 0-0. I remember when they just basically, it was like a training exercise. There's barely any shots in the game, and they were just both happy at the end with the 0-0. I think at this point with Man City, kind of on this run, as you say, and they've got a very fresh team, fresh squad. They can put out, 2 different 11s and still be too good for Man United. And with United, they haven't been scoring many goals recently, in any competition. I think this will be the time that City are just a bit too good for them. And I think if they can get an early-ish goal, I think it could be 2 or 3-0 personally. But yeah.
Yeah, agree there, Andrew. So yeah, it's De Bruyne, but the savvy amongst us at Gundogan, I think he's maybe 0.2 less. He's obviously going to be a great option as well.
Yeah.
Jesse Lingard, he's another midfielder. I've been fairly sweet on since he arrived at West Ham. I think I picked him up on that first game around about 7.9 million. He's up at 10.2 for this week, and I still think there's value in that, especially against this Leeds side with the poorest defence. You would think that West Ham are going to score at least one, and from an attacking sense, you can probably maybe only count on one hand who realistically is going to be in and around. You've got your Souček, but then it's Antonio. I know Willie Stott, Bowen is being in and out, and then you've maybe got Lanzini, Ben Roma. I know he's had even Johnson in there, and with Cresswell, the bullets, and Lingard pulling everybody together. So I really like him. I think he's got anybody who arrives at a club and feels he's got a point to prove, whether it be to himself, supporters, former managers, the England boss, then then I'm happy to take a punt on them, because that they're going to be going out there and they're not wearing the flip flops. They're going out with a purpose, and again in his own head, he's probably looking at Euro 2021 thinking, if I put a run together, I get a little bit of luck, 1 or 2 injuries, Grealish, Maddison, why can't I force myself into that squad? People talked about Ross Barkley at the beginning of the season, the way he started his 10 down at Villa Park. I don't see Lingard being any different, and particularly if West Ham continue to push and threaten for those European qualification spots. And in the third midfielder, this is a punt.
Oh, do you know what? I think it's a great punt. I really fancy him.
It will depend on what happens on Thursday night. Mason Mount, I'm not totally sold on Tuchel at the minute in terms of his team selection. There's a lot of chop and changing. It's hard to nail down, who will be in and who will be out.
Yeah.
Mount seems to be one that he does like. Conversations were around, he was Frank Lampard's, blue-eyed boy, and when he was dropped in that first game, he thought the writing was on the wall. He's dismissed that, and he's put all of those rumours to bed now. And Mount's done a decent job, so I'll be watching Everton on Thursday to see how they perform. I don't think they've been great. I'll also look at that lineup, and so Mount he's a 90%er. There's still that 10% to decide whether I may look elsewhere. I also, I was thinking Ziyech at one point, but I don't know, that is more of a risky gamble. So we leave it at Mount for that for now.
I think the fact that Mount took the last penalty when Werner was on the pitch, I think it puts him up a bracket, in my opinion, in terms of fantasy asset, because having penalties, and corners and free kicks, it just gives you that extra little, way of scoring points. I've always said you don't have to play well to score a penalty. The amount of times over the years when, I don't know, I'll use
Bruno.
Kane as an example. Bruno, they haven't played well in the game particularly. They get a penalty and then they end up with, all the spoils. And I just think if he is on penalties, I think that gives him that kind of extra edge, which puts him up a level. And I would also say, from watching him observationally, he's very unlucky. He has a lot of shots blocked, so they don't really register as big chances and things like that. But he does have a lot of shots, but a lot of them get blocked. So I think he's, as soon as he finds that way, a bit more kind of guile potentially, in a penalty area, maybe composure to, instead of just blasting it towards goal, maybe curl it into the corner or something. I think Mount's a real player, and I think that he's going to be, a really good fantasy asset for the rest of this season. And definitely go into next season, and he seems to be starting every game as well, which is obviously massive at the moment for Chelsea. Seems, I think it's only, was it Mount, Azpilicueta, and maybe one other which has started every game. So
I mean, I'd quite happily for him being dropped on Thursday, truth be told. And then I think you made up my mind. He looks like he's staying, and then quickly to the attack. The good thing about these weekly games is because I can take punts on Mikel Antonio, and I say punt in the loosest possible way because he isn't a punt. He's a quality player that performs. When he's on that pitch, he's 100%, which I love. It's just question marks over his fitness.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And that's why I'm always reluctant to pull the trigger in a season-long game. But for these one-off games against Leeds, I think he's an absolute great shout. And,
I do.
He's got me armband at the moment. I don't see that one changing. So unless David Moyes comes with anything sort of dramatic, then that's where it'll be staying. And look, I've went for the hat-trick with the Baggies as a strike partner. It's almost that sunk cost fallacy where I feel as if I got so much invested in Diania. I just can't look away from him. I've looked at some of the chances that he should have taken. I looked at his assist for Maitland-Niles last week, which Maitland-Niles fluffed. I seen his miss when he beat those defenders against Burnley and hit the bar. He's hit the post a couple of times. He's had a couple disallowed. He's scored.
He should have scored a hat-trick against Man United a few weeks ago, if you
against
remember
Manchester United. Yeah. And I just think there's a real good player there bubbling under the surface. And again, we're talking about a Newcastle United side, which is, fragile, and a goal. You'd expect maybe Lascelles up against him. He's a big old unit. He's going to bully a few in that United backline. So, he's me final choice up front alongside Antonio. And like I say, I do like that team.
I think it's superb. I think, how good this team is. I think De Bruyne is potentially the only player there who I think's a bit, iffy, just because they're playing United. Yeah. But it's not very often you say that De Bruyne is the weak link in the team. But no, I think that's a fantastically balanced team, and I'm definitely going to be pinching a few of those picks for a couple of my other entries. Just moving briefly onto my team. So I've shared your love for West Brom at the back. I've gone for Johnston. I've gone for Bartley. I've done a triple up. So I've gone for Jai, who I think is back from injury as well, who is very, very dangerous at set piece. I think he scored like 3 goals this season or something like that. I've gone for a couple of Spurs defenders against Palace. So Palace, struggling to score at the moment without Zaha. I've gone for Reguilon and Aurier at the moment. The fullbacks. Aurier is the most expensive full-back. So if he doesn't start, I'll get Doherty, or kind of whoever else starts there. I've also gone for 5 at the back. So my 5th is Matty Target, because I think he's I think he's been a bit of an unsung hero this season for Villa, but also for fantasy managers. I've got him in one of my other formats, and he's one of the cheapest players in the game. But you know what? He's the one I look for it, because he always scores. I say always. He scores a lot of points. Both from a clean sheet view, but he's also very attacking as well. So that's my back 5 or 6 at the moment. I have gone for a few premium options a bit further forward, but I think looking at your team, I'm definitely gonna jump it up a bit. So I've gone for Bruno, as I say, 8.2 million. He only needs a penalty, or he only needs a free kick. He only needs a call. He only needs something, to kind of get on the score sheet. And as I say, while City have looked absolutely phenomenal, they are still susceptible at times to just giving away an odd goal. So I do think Bruno at 8.2 could potentially be a good shout there. Liverpool and Fulham, I struggle to leave it alone. I do like your Trent shout, so this is maybe something which I shift around. I've gone for Mane, and the reason I've gone for Mane is the last few times I've watched Liverpool, they tended to push forward in kind of like a front 5, and Salah seems to be kind of on that right hand side, but pushed wide. I think Curtis Jones, the way he's been playing, he's really supported the front 4 or 5 there, and that pushes Mane inside a little bit. So just kind of watching them, looking at heat maps and things. I think Mane is kind of almost playing as that out and out striker. He hasn't got the points or goals to kind of reflect that as yet. But I think he's due, and I think that Mane could have a decent game on the weekend. And I've gone for Pascal Gross in midfield, 8.1 million. A bit of a bargain, but Brighton are going to have to score sooner or later, right? They're going to have to score sooner or later. And they've got Leicester, who are not in the best of form. And, just look at his price, 8.1 million. I think that's quite a decent price for, getting a piece of that Brighton attack. That's the 3 in midfield. Going up front, completely agree with you on Antonio. I think he's going to really bully that back line. If Strike is still playing, he tends to find himself sometimes, out of position and stuff. Meslier in goals, as much as a good, he's a very good shot stopper. I just think he struggles a bit with, the kind of just a bit of inexperience and naivety at times, passing the ball out when he shouldn't, which cost them, it's cost them goals all season, haven't it? I think that Antonio will be making a play just to bully that back line, bully the keeper. I think Antonio could have, a big one, as you say. I have managed to squeeze in Harry Kane up front against Palace. I think a lot will depend, as I kind of mentioned earlier, on how they look this evening against Fulham. But from what I saw last weekend, Bale's new positioning, if he starts, seems to have unleashed Kane a little bit. He's not playing that number 10 or that quarterback role as much anymore. He's playing a lot more further upfield, and so I can maybe see him getting a goal or 2 there, but we'll see. But that's my 11 at the moment. But like I say, looking at your team, Ben, I'm definitely going to be putting in a couple of entries and kind of mixing and matching a little bit, because you made some really good points. And Mason Mount, as soon as I saw Mount, when you see a play, you think, oh, I think Mount is going to be a superb player, and he got.
You've convinced me with Mount.
you watch now, but you know what happens in fantasy? It's always the way, right? You'll pick him for the 1 game week. He'll do absolutely nothing, but then you'll leave him, and then the next 3 game weeks he'll score a couple of goals in each. It's always the way. But yeah, so that's my team. But as I say, you'll definitely be entering a couple of entries there for sure. So that is it from us for this episode. All the links are below for all the games we have discussed today. And don't forget, for this week, there's also that free entry to the €7,500 tournament for new FanTeam users. So head to fanteam.com to register and to play that tournament for free. So thank you so much, Ben, again, for joining me this week.
Really enjoyed it, Andrew.
We'll have you on again very soon. And I think you'll be back, actually, before the deadline with another podcast as well, maybe kind of looking at things from a more data view.
Yeah. The
So,
stat man. Talk to the stat man, Jason, to give his
look
insights.
out for Ben. He's all over this channel. Everywhere you look, you get that wonderful beard and that wonderful accent. So remember that if you liked what you watched, please click the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you're listening to a podcast, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. So this podcast will be available as a video on the FanTeam YouTube channel and available as an audio version on all major podcast platforms. Our website is fanteam.com. Our Twitter handles are at FanTeamOfficial and at FanTeam_UK. Give us a follow for regular game updates and for entry giveaways for lots of FanTeam competitions. I think we gave away something like, was it 10 free entries last week or something like this? There's so much really good stuff in it. So make sure you follow us on Twitter. There's a lot of giveaways on there. We will be back very soon, looking ahead to the Game Week 28 Weekly Monster. The very best of luck for Game Week 27. Goodbye for now.